Hello and welcome to Leadapreneur Online. We're looking at Module 4, Performance of the overall learning journey of how to lead. And we're looking at Step 1, Effective Execution. And as always, we start with why. Why does effective execution matter? Well, effective execution is the ability to successfully perform the desired task. And the better your ability to execute your plans, the better your ability to achieve great results. As we can see in the diagram here, there's no point in having a great strategy because that alone does not guarantee success. We need to be able to execute the strategy effectively in order to achieve the desired results. And of course, that's what we can see in football. There's no point in having a brilliant manager who creates the most sophisticated strategies if the team can't perform those plans. You need to be able to actually score the goals and win the game, not simply create a great plan of how you're going to do it. And that's why Peter Drucker talked about strategy as being a commodity, whereas execution is an art. What he's saying here is that anyone can create a great plan, but it takes brilliance to execute that plan effectively. And we also come to the essence of effective execution with Christopher Columbus, who is a bit of a hero of mine, because what he says here, I think, sums it up very nicely. For the execution of the voyage to the Indies, I did not make use of intelligence, mathematics, or maps. In other words, what he's saying there is that he was able to discover the Americas because he just went and did it. And that really is the essence of effective execution. It's about minimizing the talk and the planning and maximizing going out in there and making it happen. But we need to contrast that with this quote from Steve Jobs. Be a yardstick of quality. Some people aren't used to an environment where excellence is expected. I did say that we need to go out there and take action and make things happen. But we mustn't do that in such a way that we do it randomly. We must do it with thoughtfulness and a clear purpose towards being as excellent as we possibly can be. As a leader, you are responsible for the excellence of the output that your team or your organization deliver. The higher your standards, the higher the standards of the performance that your team will deliver. Therefore, it's important that you hold yourself to the highest possible standards of excellence to ensure that your team and your organization deliver the best possible results. And it's clear that Steve Jobs was instrumental in the success of Apple by insisting on having the highest possible standards of design and technology and manufacturing in order to successfully deliver the iPod, iPhone, and iPads. And we have a great example of that search for excellence and effective execution when we look at the International Space Station. It represents the apex of human achievement in so many fields. Think about how much work was required from economic leadership, political leadership, technological leadership, engineering leadership, the work it took to train the astronauts to be able to perform the tasks effectively. The list is endless. Everyone needed to perform their task and their role perfectly in order for the International Space Station to be a continued success. And in the same way, you need to make sure that all the elements of your team and your organization come together effectively in order for them to perform excellently. So what do you need to do? The first is to recognize is that fundamentally results require action. Now, of course, you might be sitting there saying, that is really obvious. It is really obvious. But we also spend a lot of our time wasting away trying to create elaborate plans, when actually what we should be focusing on is taking action. Sometimes it's better just to start getting things done rather than sitting there daydreaming about them. And by focusing on effective execution, what we're actually looking at is the ability to translate the plan into action. So we're not walking around taking random actions. We have a clear idea in our mind of what it is that we actually want to do. And then the third step is to recognize that there is a balance between planning effectively and effective execution. It's far better to have a simple plan that is brilliantly executed than a brilliant plan that is poorly executed. In the end, it's not what you wanted to do, it's what you actually achieved that matters. And therefore, it's much more important to have brilliant results than brilliant plans that deliver mediocre results. How can you as a leader make sure that you can create effective execution in your team? Well, there are 3 simple steps that you need to take in order to ensure that your team are empowered to be effective at execution. The first is to make sure that your team are clear about what they need to do. And there are 3 subcomponents to this. Do the people understand what they actually need to do in terms of the desired outcome? Do they understand how they should go about delivering the desired outcome? And do they understand why they're working to achieve the goal? If we use the example of the International Space Station, let's imagine that you're leading part of the engineering team. Now think about it. For your engineers to be effective, they first of all need to understand clearly what it is that they should be producing. They don't need some sort of vague idea of, it's some kind of, solar panel, not really sure, we'll just kind of make it up as we go along. No, that's not right. They need to be crystal clear about exactly what it is that they need to produce. They need to have a clear understanding of how to achieve it. How are we going to build that solar panel? Now, this doesn't mean that you dictate in micromanagement detail every little step that they need to take. That's for them to decide because they're the experts. Your task as the leader of that engineering team is to make sure that they have a clear understanding of how they need to do it, rather than telling them explicitly what you need to do. And then finally, they need to understand how it all comes together. It's no use just simply understanding that you're building a solar panel if you don't understand how it fits into the greater scheme of things. You need to understand how that solar panel would affect the whole space station and how it affects the whole construction process in order to effectively work on the overall project. So by doing these three things, you've ensured that the people in your team are clear about what, how, and why. The next step is to look at motivation. Because it's not just enough to simply be clear about what you want to do, you actually have to want to do it. You need to have a willingness to perform the task. And there are three basic components here. You need to care about the outcome. Do you actually really believe in what it is that you're doing? Or are you just uninterested? Because effective execution requires that you care. If you're not interested in what the result is, you'll just do any old job. And as a result, any old amount of quality will be accepted by you. If you care about what it is that you're creating, then you want it to be to the highest possible standard. And your task as a leader is to make sure that your people do care about what it is that they are creating. Secondly, do your people consent to the way that the product or the service is being delivered? They might argue with you and say, this is either ethically incorrect, I don't believe that we're doing this in the right manner, or they might disagree with the manufacturing process. They might think, there's a much better way of doing this. If people don't agree with the way that something is being done, then they will naturally resist it, and that will only slow things down and prevent effective execution. So make sure that the people consent to how they should be doing the thing that they need to do. And then finally, commitment. Sometimes things don't go right. You need to put in more hours, you need to put in more effort to get something done. You need to go above and beyond what's expected of you, and that requires deep commitment. So in order to really ensure that things are executed effectively, you need to ask your team to have that high level of commitment to achieving the outcome no matter what. And one of your key challenges as a leader is to build that level of commitment. And that's where we can see that that really powerful sense of purpose becomes important, because that gives people the motivation and the inspiration that they need to be highly committed to achieving a project. Finally, people are now clear about what they need to do. They're really motivated and willing to do it. But we need to consider one final factor. Are they actually able to do it? Because it's no use if they're really excited about doing the task and they're really motivated for it, if they don't actually have the skill to do it. And so that's where we need to look at, do they have the competence to actually create the desired outcome? Using that example of the International Space Station, if you're leading an engineering team, then you need to make sure that your engineers have the actual skills to build that solar panel. Otherwise, it'll all be in vain. Secondly, they might have the skills, but if they lack the tools, then they're not going to be able to build the solar panel either. So you have to make sure they have the right skills, but that they're also equipped with the right tools and perhaps the right relationships in order to be able to deliver the final outcome. The relationships are important because perhaps your team members need to contact a supplier to build a new part for them. If they're not able to access that supplier and enable them to, and have them build that part, then you won't be able to deliver an effective outcome. So being effectively equipped is not just a matter of having the right tools, but it's also about being able to access the right tools. Finally, environment. And this is really crucial for ensuring long-term sustained performance. Because if you're operating in an environment that is, for example, very unsafe, then you're not going to be able to execute effectively over a long amount of time. It might seem dramatic, but if people are dying around you or being regularly injured, then that's not going to enable you to do your job well. So it's important to ensure that the environment that you're working in is safe, secure, and optimized for you to be able to do your job. So in summary, as a leader, you need to make sure that your people and your organization are empowered to be effective by giving them the clarity that they need to understand what they need to do. They need to be motivated and willing to actually go about and perform the task. And they need to be able to perform the task by having the right complement of skills, tools, and environment to enable them to deliver effectively. So in front of you, you have a table that I've created that enables you to understand the execution capability of your team. So I've imagined that I'm leading a team of 2 people called Tom and Jane. And what I've done is I've created this table by interviewing them and asking them about whether they feel clear, willing, and able. As you can see in this table, Tom feels clear about what he needs to do, but there are some issues around whether he's willing and able to actually perform the tasks. On the other hand, Jane is willing to do the tasks, has the skills to do the tasks, but is not really clear about what exactly she needs to do. And so what this means for me as the leader of the team is it shows me clearly where I need to invest my efforts in order to improve the performance of my team. For Tom, I can see that I need to invest time into enabling him to be happy with the way that we need to achieve the result. In other words, I need to transform the consent to the way it must be achieved from a no into a yes. And I need to invest time into inspiring and motivating him to be committed to achieving the outcome. I also need to invest time into making sure he has the right tools and relationships to perform the task, and that he feels that the environment is right for him to successfully complete the outcomes. On the other hand, I need to invest in Jane in a different area. She feels willing and able, but I need to make sure that she's much clearer about what she needs to do, how she needs to do it, and why she's doing what she does. And so my goal as a leader is to transform this table into a grid of green yeses, and then keep it at the green yeses. Because it's not enough to simply make sure that everyone is saying yes now. I need to regularly check in with them, maybe every few weeks do an interview with them, to make sure that they feel clear about what it is that they need to do, that they're willing to do it, and that they're able to do it. A great example of empowering your employees to be effective at execution is the department store called Nordstrom, based in North America. Nordstrom are well known as having one of the greatest standards for customer service, and they focus on the idea of empowering their employees to be clear about what they need to do, willing to perform the task, and able to do it. And we can see that in their one customer service rule, which is this: use your best judgment in all situations. There will be no other rules. And this is taken straight out of the Nordstrom's employee handbook. And it really is like that. The organization works hard to empower its people to be able to use their judgment at all times to give their customers what they want. And by ensuring that their employees are clear about what they need to do, that they're highly motivated, and that they have the ability to actually perform the tasks, Nordstrom has won for itself one of the best customer service reputations in the world. And many of its customers are very loyal to the organization because they don't feel they can get the same levels of customer service anywhere else. So let's have some practical tips on what you need to do to be effective at execution. The first, very simple, take action. This might seem blindingly obvious and almost dangerously patronizing. Dangerously so. But it's not. In fact, it's the most straightforward advice that you can take, because too many leaders get caught up in the mysteries of the planning process without actually ever getting around to getting the job done. So it's much better in point number 2 to focus on creating a simple, clear, and effective plan that is brilliantly executed than a brilliant plan that nobody understands and never gets performed. And to do that, to ensure brilliant execution, you need to focus on supporting your people. Your key task as a leader is to enable your people to perform effectively. There's no point you doing everything yourself, because that's not the task of leadership. The task of leadership is to enable others to perform the task. And if you think about it, it makes sense. If you can enable 5 people to work together effectively, rather than just yourself, then 5 people working effectively will always deliver more than one person working on their own. And so, in order to do that, you need to focus on enabling your people to be clear about what they need to do, willing to do the task, and that they have the skills, that they have the training, and that they have the environment in order to be able to effectively perform the task that's required of them. In summary, effective execution is not easy to do. As Peter Drucker said, it is an art form, and it's something that you have to invest time and effort into in order to make sure that your team master it. However, the payoff is worth it, because by ensuring effective execution, you're able to translate your strategies into brilliant successes.